Okay, so this is the background of the kings of Israel. And so um, here's trivia. Who is the first king of Israel?
Saul.
Very good. Saul is the first king of Israel. Who's the second king of Israel?
David.
David.
Very good. Who's the third king of Israel?
Solomon.
Solomon. And then who's the fourth king?
Oh.
Trump.
This is where it gets a little complicated
Yes.
because um, after Solomon, not many people realize this, not many Bible students, even maybe, uh,
Rehoboam.
don't realize that the kingdom was split in two.
Oh.
There
Yes.
was a civil war, just like a civil war in the United States, the North against the South.
Mhm.
Wow.
Pretty much what happened. Not as violent, but that pretty much what happened. And there became two kingdoms, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. If you look at a map of Israel,
Wow.
there's a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom that took place because of Solomon's sin.
Judah
Oh.
and Jerusalem.
You guys know that?
No.
Judah and Jerusalem.
Something? What is that? Is that you,
Ju-
Daphne? Go ahead.
Judah and Jerusalem.
No, you're right with Judah.
Israel, I'm sorry.
Very good. So the kingdoms, when they split up,
Wow.
it this is where it gets very complicated. But this is why you need to sort this out in your Bible. The northern kingdom was called Israel,
Wow.
so they kept the name, but the southern kingdom became known as Judah.
Judah.
And so that's why when you sometimes see the references to Israel and Judah, they're talking about two kingdoms, depending on the context, obviously. But
Is
at least you
what's
are.
Judah called now, Pastor Bert?
Judah.
You mean
If Israel kept the name, then what's Judah called now?
yeah? See, what uh, makes it complicated is what makes it complicated is both Israel was conquered by the Assyrians, and then Judah was conquered by the Babylonians, and then the Babylonians or the Persians, which is Iran, the Persians conquered the Babylonians, and so they kind of took over that whole area. And so, in a sense, Israel and Judah, they lost the kingdoms.
To Iran?
Well, complicated, yes, but it became conquered territory.
So, but technically, it was never Iran's. They just
Persia. I
conquered
think the
it.
Iran
Wait, hold
before
on,
is
hold on, hold on.
Persia.
Sandali lang. So wait. So originally, it's always been um Israel. Well, you call it Israel, right?
Yeah, that's why.
So
So
so we're
identified as
going to so
Israel.
Iran is going to war for land that they never originally owned.
Are you talking about back then or now?
Right now.
No, don't talk about now because it's too much history.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I'm sorry, my bad.
Thousands of years of history.
Got it. Thank you.
So we just have to go back to the history back then, the con
Okay.
and as far as we can go, right? When Judah and Israel was conquered, right? Um, there were no more kings.
Oh,
There
wow.
were no more kings because the line of kings, right? The succession of kings that's supposed to take place, it stopped.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why it's complicated. And then you're dealing with empires that ruled over that land that used to belong to Israel. I still consider it Israel, but it was conquered. So it was conquered by the Persians, It was conquered by the Babylonians. It was, the order is that first the Assyrians, but they didn't conquer all of it. They only conquered the northern kingdom. Then the Babylonians defeated the Assyrians, and by default, they were able to take possession of the northern kingdom, the Israel, and then they also conquered the southern kingdom, and that's with the Babylonians now, the Babylonian Empire. And then, while both kingdoms are already conquered and are ruled by the Babylonian Empire, then you have the Persians, which are
Mhm.
the Iranians in that sense, from Persia. They then conquered the Babylonian Empire and are now have now taken over their land, right? Once they defeated the Babylonian Empire, then the Persian Empire took over. Whatever the Babylonian
Wow.
Empire ruled, now Persian Empire took over. This is, part of the history. So it's been conquered, and there are no more kings in succession in Israel or Judah. And then after the Persians, we have, Persians, and then we have, after the Persians is the Grecian Empire.
The who? The Grecian?
Yeah, the Greeks.
Oh, wow.
Alexander the Great is your point of reference for the Grecian Empire. And
Wow.
if you want to try to process it, when the Persians were fighting, when the Greeks were fighting the Persians, that's where you get the movie 300.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys are familiar with that movie.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it was between the
Persian.
the Greek Macedonians, the Spartans, the Greek versus the Persian Empire. The guy with all the chains in the movie.
Xerxes.
Yeah, Xerxes, very good. Yeah. And then so from there, the Greek Empire ruled the whole entire Mediterranean world. Not the whole world, the Mediterranean world, which is why they call it the whole world, basically, because
Wow.
history. So why is that so significant? They introduced, it's called the Hellenization of the world. Hellenization. Helena, she was that Greek princess. So Hellenization is to spread the Greek language and the Greek culture to that whole Mediterranean area, which includes Israel.
Wow.
So when Jesus comes into the scene, the whole world speaks Greek. Yeah, that's how you got the whole world speaking Greek during the time of Jesus. They spoke Hebrew and Aramaic, but they also speak the common Greek language throughout the empire.
Jesus spoke Aramaic, right? Was that his birth language, Pastor?
Yeah, Hebrew, Aramaic. Yeah,
Yeah.
Aramaic is the ancient version of Hebrew.
Gotcha.
But that's how the Greek language spread. So when Jesus comes into the scene, they already have their Old Testament, right? The book of Genesis all the way to the book of Malachi, the 39 books of the Old Testament, maybe more in their time. It was already translated in Greek. And so they had no problem using the Greek translation. But it was because of Alexander the Great. But who came after Alexander the Great? When he died, I think, at the age of 30. So he ruled the world, the known world, the Mediterranean world. And then when he died,
Wow.
he had his 4 generals
This is
split up.
fascinating.
Yeah, this is all historical. You can.
Why didn't you teach us this sooner, Pastor Burr? You've been holding out. What the? Wow.
Yeah,
This
this
is
is fast.
amazing.
So when you get into Alexander the Great's death,
Yeah.
then the kingdom is split up among his 4 generals, And so during that time when the kingdom is split up among his 4 generals, that's when you have that silent period from the Old Testament to the New Testament. And then who comes into the scene? Who comes into the power?
Jesus of Nazareth.
No.
Oh, sorry.
Historically,
The Romans.
the Romans.
The Romans,
Very
yes.
good. Now you got the Roman Empire.
The Empire. You're talking about the Empire.
The Roman Empire comes into.
Yep.
So when you are opening your New Testament,
Caesar Augustus.
you already are aware that the Romans have their presence all over the Mediterranean, including Israel. Roman presence is in Israel. Israel is
Wow.
conquered, and you'll see Caesarea as an example.
Yep.
City named after the Caesar, and on it goes. That because of the Roman presence, they had the power during the time of Jesus to destroy and kill Jesus.
It was the Romans who killed Jesus, Pastor.
Yeah, they were, and that's because they were now in power.
Oh, yes.
And they took that power away from the Greeks, the Grecian Empire, right?
The Grecian, yeah.
Yeah, and it's more complicated because it was split into 4 kingdoms and 4 generals. I don't want to get too detailed, too caught up in the details of that. Just generally, that's the order of sequence of the powers that ruled over the land of Israel. So from Assyria to Babylon, from the Babylonians, the Persians came into the scenes. From the Persians, the Greeks to the Romans. And there you go. So when you think about history, it's always been one power ruling over another power, conquering a territory. They conquer it for a while. They're the ones in power for a while until somebody else comes in and conquers them, and then there's a new conqueror. That's the history. So when you think about the history of Israel, before Israel conquered that land, it was occupied by the Canaanites and all those other tribes. But see, God is the one who talks about that land. I'm giving you that land.
Yeah. Don't forget the Egyptians, right, Pastor?
Well, that's in Egypt, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they've ever controlled Israel, but yeah.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, whether they stayed within their boundaries or not, but everybody, had to deal with world powers in that area. And when you look at that, it's God who is in control. And that's why studying history from, the perspective of God's view and the teaching, it really makes a lot of sense. And so we keep going with history and let God, reveal his purpose. But in Solomon being the last king concerning, the united kingdom of Israel, before it got split up, is what we're going to study. We have a few minutes to study that, so it's good to be able to look at that. So why was it split? Here's the explanation in chapter 11. It says, King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughters. Pharaoh's daughter, the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Edomites, Sidonites, and the Hittites. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, you must not intermarry with them. Okay? This is where you see the beginning, the seeds that were already starting to take root in Solomon concerning how this kingdom is going to get split up. I mean, between you and I, it shouldn't have been split up.
But it split after his death, right, Pastor Bert?
Yeah. So
Okay.
so there's a difference between the prophecy, God's word, and God's timing.
Okay.
This is all fascinating stuff. But what he did was he married foreign wives, which is a warning. It was he's the most wisest person. He already knows he shouldn't be doing that, but he does it anyway. See, this is where obviously how sin works. You already know it's not right. You already know God doesn't want you to do that, but you do it anyway. And he did it so many times. He had 700 wives
Oh my God.
and then 300 concubines.
Wow.
So when you think about, Solomon having sexual relations with all these 1,000 women, surely he had more than 1,000 children.
Oh my God.
So there's a lot of seeds. So there's a lot of Solomon's descendants out there we don't even know about, but they were, obviously out there.
Yeah, he was a dirty little bird.
Hey, Dad. That's
Yeah.
it.
Never a dull
I
moment.
heard him called the horny toad, but that's another story. Okay.
Dirty
Okay.
bird.
So it says, you must not intermarry with them because they will surely turn your hearts
Yes.
after their gods. See that? The living God has given this warning to the people, and Solomon knows, and yet God even appeared to Solomon in a dream, and still it didn't stop, right? It didn't stop from getting involved with all these women, because he's the king. And that's why, when you're looking at the king, you're basically thinking, man, I can do whatever I want. I'm the king. There's a movie where the guy says, it's good to be the king. And he gets away with all these acts. Well, that's what his mentality. I can do whatever I want. I can marry whoever I want. Because I'm the king. No one's going to tell me what to do, right? And he already knows he's disobeying God at this point. So let's continue with his story. Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. There you go. So you got the 700 wives and 300 concubines in verse 3. Okay. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods. Oh, that is so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Now he's gonna, okay, it started with him, falling in love with these women. They're all Miss Universe. What is it? Miss Universe in their own country. Most beautiful, I'm sure. And now they were turning his heart towards worshiping their gods. See, that's what happens when you get involved with somebody who doesn't, like, for example, who doesn't love Jesus the same way you do. The Bible forbids you to marry them. Do not be unequally yoked, the Bible says. They can say, I'm a Christian. Yeah, I'm a Christian, right? But is their heart really, deeply in love with Jesus like you? You love Jesus deeply, but they just said they're Christian, but it doesn't mean they have the same heartbeat. And so don't be unequally yoked with people like that, especially those who have a different religion. If I'm Muslim and you're Christian and you marry a Muslim, oh, now you're dealing with more tensions because, it gets even worse. See? So they turned his heart towards their gods. Okay. First he tolerated it, and then he goes from tolerating it to accepting it, to now participating in it. Yeah. See? So there's a progression. Let's read it. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord, his God, as the heart of David, his father, had been. See? So between Solomon's heart and David's heart, God said David's heart was always loyal and devoted to God, even though he was a sinner, committing adultery and murder.
Yeah.
He's not known for committing adultery or murder. He just had a lot of wives and a lot of women. His sin was turning away from the living God and turning to their gods. And that's the major sin that will, destroy you in your walk with God. If you ever decide, I'm going to worship a different Jesus, I'm going to worship some other God, I'm not going to fall in line with the gospel anymore, you're going to get yourself into a big mess. So this is what Solomon did. It says he followed, I'm in verse 5 now, 11:5. He followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely as David his father had done. On a hill east of Jerusalem, Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, and for Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. He did the same for all his foreign wives who burned incense and offered sacrifices to their gods. See the kind of sin Solomon committed. The Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. Although he had forbidden Solomon to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's command. See, so there's a difference between having all the wisdom of God and, in this case, betraying God, being disloyal to God. See, you can have all the wisdom, but this is a willful act of
Disobedience.
disobedience to following. It's basically being spiritual adultery. This is the kind of sin that God will severely punish you for. All the other sins, they're in a sense forgivable. This is the harshest sin that you can commit, which is spiritual adultery, being disloyal.
Yeah. Oh, he took after his dad, David.
Well, when you compare
Bathsheba.
Solomon, God commends David. You know that, right? I just read it.
Yeah.
Right, for
He did
following
not
it. Right?
follow the Lord completely as David, his father, had done. See, because this is spiritual. He's worshiping other gods. David never did that.
I was referring to adultery. Sorry, Pastor Bert.
Yeah, in that sense, because David committed physical adultery.
Yeah.
While Solomon committed, spiritual adultery with God.
Yeah. Idolatry. Yeah.
He started to worship the foreign gods. So
yeah, got it.
But one is more severe than the other.
Yes.
That's why this is going to be judged by God.
Yep.
Okay, so let's
Yep.
get about the judgment. Let's see. Although he had forbidden Solomon to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's command. Verse 11. So the Lord said to Solomon, since this is your attitude, and you have not kept my covenant with my decrees, which I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. There is God's. See, it was spoken right here. But it doesn't happen during Solomon's lifetime. See how
For
God.
the sake of your father.
So so you see how God works behind.
Oh, number 12 is heartbreaking.
Nevertheless, for the sake of David your father,
Oh,
not do it during your lifetime. I will tear it out of your hand. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. And who is his son? SR, who is his son?
Rehoboam.
Very good. Rehoboam.
Rehoboam.
and Jeroboam.
I was a step away. Yeah,
Jeroboam.
Rehoboam.
Jeroboam is not his son. It's Rehoboam.
Oh,
That's
Rehoboam, sorry.
Rehoboam, yeah.
And
so
It's okay.
Rehoboam is officially
His,
allowed to be the king because he is
his direct heir.
son. Yeah, he's the son of Solomon. And
Right.
as we keep reading, oh, I can't believe we're running out of time, having so much fun.
Yeah.
You'll continue this tomorrow, Pastor. It's very interesting.
So again,
Yeah.
behind the scenes, God already speaking, but he doesn't fulfill it until Rehoboam. But let me read it for time. Yet I will not tear the whole kingdom from him, but he will give him one tribe. But will give him one tribe for the sake of David my servant, and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen. See, so he gets one tribe.
This is verse 12?
Yeah, read verse.
Wow.
If you want to.
Mine says, mine is beautiful. It says, but I loved your father
Oh,
David.
excuse me. I was reading verse 13, but go ahead and read verse.
Okay, yeah. Number 12 says, but I loved your father David, so I will not take your kingdom away from you while you are alive. I will wait until your son becomes king, then I will take it from him. 13. Still, I will not tear away all the kingdom from your son. I will leave him one tribe to rule. I will do this for my servant David and for Jerusalem, the city I chose.
There you
Wow.
go. See how powerful it is? That's why the city of Jerusalem is very important to the Jews.
That's his, chosen people.
Yeah.
I would never want Jerusalem to go to anybody else, in my personal opinion, today, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Go to Israel. But that's because of my, historical perspective.
Amen.
It's love for David.
So you see how God speaks it's like he judges and then he speaks it and then it's going to happen. How it's going to happen, okay? That's the one that we're going to, read about. So remember, it's not going to happen in Solomon's lifetime.
Yeah.
So from the way, humanly speaking, it looks like, oh, Solomon is going to be king and there's no rivals to Solomon.
Yeah.
So he'll live a good life all the way to the end, and then his son will come to power, succession, and all of a sudden, when the new king rises to power, man, how come there's all these problems going on? It's because God spoke it while Solomon was alive. So here we go. We got about 10 more minutes. Verse 14. Then the Lord raised up against Solomon an adversary, Hadad the Edomite, from the royal line of Edom. Earlier, when David was fighting with Edom, Joab, the commander of the army who had gone up to bury the dead, had struck down all the men of Edom. Joab and all the Israelites stayed there for the 6 months until they had destroyed the men of Edom. I'm going to skip all that and go to verse 23. And it says, and God raised up against Solomon another adversary, Rezon, son of Eliada, blah, 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 blah. He gathered men around him and became the leader of the band of rebels when David destroyed the forces, etc. Verse 25 says, Rezon was Israel's adversary as long as Solomon lived, adding to the trouble caused by Hadad. So Rezon ruled in Aram and was hostile towards Israel. So yeah, there was tension with Israel, but with Solomon, but he was never conquered. That was the point I was trying to make. Solomon was never conquered while he was king. He had his fights with other nations, and that's setting up, you know, it was known that David ruled all the nations, that were the enemies of Israel, and then Solomon took it over. And then obviously, when you're ruling over a big kingdom, there's a lot of tribes or nations that try to rise up and go against you, but they never succeeded. So when we get to verse 26 now, also Jeroboam, see, you guys now are introduced to Jeroboam. Remember, SR Rehoboam is Solomon's son, but Jeroboam is not. So let's read about Jeroboam. Also, Jeroboam, son of Nebat, rebelled against the king. He was one of Solomon's officials. He was an inside man. Solomon's officials. An Ephraimite from Zeredeth, and his mother was a widow named Zeruiah. Now, he's obviously Jewish, an Israelite, but he was not in the line of Solomon. He's not Solomon's son. Okay. Here is the account of how he rebelled against the king. Solomon had built the supporting terraces and had filled in the gap in the wall of the city of David, his father. Now Jeroboam was a man of standing because he was one of Solomon's officials. That makes sense. And when Solomon saw how well the young man did his work, he put him in charge of the whole labor force of the house of Joseph. About that time, Jeroboam was going out of Jerusalem, and Ahijah, the prophet of Shiloh, met him on the way wearing a new cloak. So now we're dealing with a prophet. Another prophet of God comes into the scene. Two men, the two of them were alone out in the country, and Ahijah took hold of the new cloak he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. He said to Jeroboam, "Take 10 pieces for yourself, for this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. See, I am going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes."
Wow.
Do you see the prophecy shaping up to have Jeroboam become the king of the 10 tribes? And then, because we know Rehoboam, he will be the king of the 2 tribes. So 10 and 2. Okay? It says, see, I am going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes. But for the sake of my servant David and the city of Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, he will have 1 tribe. I will do this because they have forsaken me and worship Ashtoreth, the god of the Sidonians, and all these, etc., all these other gods, and have not walked in my ways, nor done what is right in my eyes, nor kept my statutes and laws as David, Solomon's father, did. Just so you know, when you start worshiping other gods, you know what happens? You start breaking all of God's commands. So all the commands about the Sabbath, you're going to break that. You're going to break the command concerning murder. You're going to break the command concerning adultery and stealing and bearing false witness and coveting. You're going to break all those commands when you're worshiping a foreign god. And I'm sure that, that lifestyle was prevalent because they were worshiping other gods. See, it starts with the worship of a false god, which will lead you into a lot of sinful acts. So if you stay worshiping the true God, yeah, you'll sin, but you'll always find a way for forgiveness and reconciliation, but you're never going to pursue that lifestyle. The acts of the sinful nature, Paul says, are sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, envying, drunkenness, orgies, and anything like it. And it says, if you live this way, you're not going to inherit the kingdom of God. It's not saying if you commit some of these sins here and there. No, it's if you live this way. See, there's a difference. And when you're worshiping a different God, when you stop worshiping the true God, you're going to live this way. So, just a thought of what was going on, during the time of Solomon's rule in his later years as he was worshiping other gods, which then influences the whole nation to worship other gods, right? And there's obviously always going to be a remnant who will not worship the same way the king does, because they know he's wrong. So, let's continue. However, as for you, verse 37, I'm skipping. As for you, this is the prophet to Jeroboam, I will take you, and you will rule over all that your heart desires. You will be king over Israel. See, that's where you have this prophecy from the prophet speaking to Jeroboam. You're going to be ruling Israel, and it's defined with the 10 tribes, where they're staying. You're going to be ruling over all the 10 tribes. So now we got 2 kings, right? I will build you a dynasty. No, let me. I think I skipped. If you do whatever I command you and walk in my ways and do what is right in my eyes, by keeping my statutes, and keeping my statutes means keeping the first 3 commandments, right? You shall have no other gods. You shall not have any idols. You shall not use my name in vain. At least those 3 commands. And walk in my ways and do what is right in my eyes by keeping my statutes and commands, as David, my servant, did, I will be with you. Isn't that a great promise for Jeroboam?
Yeah.
You're the king, and I will make you just as powerful as David when he was ruling, if you keep my commands, which is if you keep worshiping me as the true God.
And you know what? That's a supreme example. He's not even in the bloodline. He can make anyone king. God can do whatever he wants
According to his purposes, exactly.
according to his purpose.
Right? And we know what his purpose was here, right? His purpose was because of the punishment that Solomon received. But it's interesting how he punishes Solomon, but it's not Solomon who, Solomon's already dead at this point.
He left a mess.
Or not at this point, but it's already, this prophecy is being spoken, but Solomon will die and then it'll be fulfilled.
Yeah.
Because remember, well, I know you remember that he sought to kill Jeroboam because he knew that was likely going to happen. Then Jeroboam arose and fled.
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
To Egypt until that's one of my favorite parts.
So let me
because that's what we can do too, right?
Wrap it up with this, okay? Let me wrap.
Alrighty.
Okay. If you do whatever I command you and walk in my ways and do what is right in my eyes by keeping my statutes and commands, as David my servant did, I will be with you. I will build you a dynasty as enduring as the one I built for David, and you will give it, and I will give Israel to you. I will humble David's descendants because of this, but not forever. Solomon tried to kill Jeroboam. See, so from the human perspective, right? Solomon tried to kill Jeroboam, right? But will Solomon succeed? He will not succeed because God is in control now, showing that he's in control over Jeroboam's life as far as protecting him from being killed. But Jeroboam fled to Egypt to Shishak, the king, and stayed there until Solomon's death. That's as far as we got. We covered 1 Kings 11. As fast as much as we could within our limits. But do you see how when God is working behind the scenes, he's speaking who's going to be the leader, who's going to be the king, what's going to happen to this kingdom, and all to show us that we better take notice that when God is doing these things, we should pay attention. I think the healthiest way to go about that, I think in my experience, is just to keep your eyes on God. And if God raises up a leader, a king, quote unquote, um, it's for you to ask him, Lord, there's a reason. What is your purpose for raising him up? And what is your purpose for bringing him down? And in the meantime, we'll continue. The command for us is to pray for our leaders. so, so if we were under Solomon's reign, we would be praying for Solomon, even though he's committing all these weird and ungodly acts. And then when the kingdom is divided, we should be praying for Rehoboam, the king of Judah, and then pray for Jeroboam, the king of Israel. And we should be praying that God's purpose prevails. That's all we can do. Now, if you want to take it upon yourself to kill them,
Oh my God.
we'll cover that. The assassination attempts.
Mm.
Yeah, if that's what God puts in you to do that, then you'll succeed in it.
Mhm.
See?
Wow.
But if God doesn't want him to die, you won't succeed. Just like Solomon didn't succeed in killing Jeroboam. See?
Mhm.
Very fascinating when you look at history from God's perspective. So on that note, let's close in prayer. Who would like to close? Anybody?